Hello, and welcome to Community Connectors. My name is John Kerber, and I'll be your host for this episode. As a reminder, the goal of Community Connectors is to learn what it takes to run a thriving community space in the modern era. Community spaces are those beloved third places like libraries, parks, museums, coffee shops, etc. Our guest for this episode is David Lee King. David is the Digital Services Director for the Topeka and Shawnee County Public Library in Kansas, as well as an author and speaker on the combination of digital and in-person services at libraries. I think you'll want to hear his insights and experience when it comes to this subject. So welcome, David, to Community Connectors. So thank you for being on the show today. I appreciate it. David, you are if I get this correct, you are the Digital Services Director for the Topeka and Shawnee County Public Library. Is that right?
Yep, that's correct.
But you're also an author, and you've authored, is it 4 books? Is that
A couple of books, a bunch of articles.
yeah.
I've got a blog at davidleeking.com. So yeah, I tend to either get good ideas or my library does good stuff and then I share.
Yeah,
That's where that came from.
well, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. And yeah, so that's actually, we read your article on that about multimedia studios in libraries and kind of, advocating for why libraries should have multimedia studios in them. And so I was just wondering, I mean, what kind of caused your library to have multimedia studios, and what was kind of the progression of that? Why did
Yeah,
the Topeka Library end up having them?
sure. So years ago, makerspaces, that
Yeah,
kind of thing started being a thing. Um, with some larger libraries and more, you'd see them in just communities.
yeah,
So I pushed the right buttons on our library director at the time,
yeah,
and she was able to find a little money for us to do a very small space
yeah,
just to see what happened. And it really took off. Basically, people used it enough that, they were like, there was a line for the 3D printer or the one small closet studio space we had.
yeah,
People were being turned back because it was busy, that kind of thing. So then we expanded it quite a bit.
yeah.
Um, and it's a huge need in our community, a place to create digital content or physical stuff too, depending on what people are doing.
Yeah.
I look back, I've lived in Topeka almost 20 years, I guess.
Hmm.
And when I first moved here, there were 2 commercial studios in
Yeah.
town. Now there are none.
Yeah. And by
So,
commercial studios, you mean like recording studios?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Because part of what we have are 2 small project studios. One focused a little more on video, one focused a little more on audio. But there's no place to do that now
Yeah.
unless you go buy the equipment and do your own training. And why can't a library supply that?
Yeah. Well, and so you mentioned the usage of it, and that it was already busy, and there were basically kind of
Hmm.
like lines and things like that. And so did it exceed kind of your expectations of how much people would actually use it? And then what about the expansion? Like has now with 2 studios and that is it
Hmm.
continuing to be used, or kind of what's the situation?
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I mean that was the catalyst for it. We actually went from a really small space to ending up. So we on the second floor of our building, we had what was a department space,
Yeah.
staff space. We moved them to another area of the building and redid that space to make it a public space. So it's highly expanded.
Yeah.
And we have a bunch of stuff there. We got the 2 small studios spaces, 5 small meeting rooms, for 1 to 3 people. So you could do like Zoom in. I could have done this in one of those rooms.
Sure.
30 public computers, and then this big digital arts studio too. So quite an expansion for us. But
Yeah.
it's been a good expansion because again, that space is busy. So getting really good usage of our 2 studio spaces, enough again that I've heard the leaders in those spaces saying, gee, I wish we had a third space.
Yeah.
Um, some of the equipment we've got another, like we have, a Cricut vinyl cutter type
Yep.
thing,
Sure.
and we're expanding that to 2,
Nice.
so that's been busy. our digital art studio with like 3D printers and Adobe equipped computers, not as much.
Yeah.
So we're trying to figure out how to promote those better. But yeah, if we had more room in the library all of a sudden, I'm pretty sure we'd build more small meeting rooms and co-working type things and studio spaces because that's what people need these days.
Yeah, and I really wanted to ask you about that too. So how do you kind of decide what is needed at the library? I mean,
Mhm.
because and this is the thing, like libraries have changed. Sounds like you've been working with libraries for a while, and
Yeah.
the I mean, it cracks me up because like the Webster definition is still that a library is a collection of books, right?
Yeah.
However, a
Right.
public library doesn't seem to fit. Obviously that is that collections are very important,
Yeah.
but there's kind of this other element going on right now.
Hmm.
So just talk a little bit about, what kind of is the public library today? What is it really used for? But then also, if it's not just the books, if it's not just the collections, how do you decide what should be there and what shouldn't be
Yeah.
there? Because there's only so many resources to
Right.
utilize. So would you expand on
Yeah.
those? Yeah.
So I would say in the traditional sense of, libraries have books, that
Yes.
kind of thing. Of course, we still do that.
Yep.
There, half of our collection is digital now, but we still
Yep.
have that. But what
Yep.
I like to say is that we're a we're a place that collects and shares stories.
Okay. Yeah.
So, and we help people share their own stories. So we've got like the Jack Reacher novels or whatever's popular at the time, but we also have our studio space so people can create their own music and share that aspect of their own story, or a genealogy collection so they can look into their family's story.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. We have big meeting rooms so a nonprofit in town can help build on their story.
Yeah.
It's that kind of thing. That's how I look at it. And then just
Yeah.
how we figured out we maybe needed to expand our space. I mean, we it it took a couple of years to do that. We had a lot of meetings
Yeah.
with with staff and just trying to figure out what was going on. But we, looked at stats from what we had, if that
Mhm.
was being used. My part of the job was sharing what other public libraries are doing because I
Mhm.
got the research aspect of what I do. So I was like, well, here's where we're going with this. It's not a weird thing.
Yep.
Libraries have ways for people to record stuff now and share.
Yeah.
And so I would give examples of that, big and small.
Hmm.
And also, like I mentioned, we don't have commercial studios anymore. I would share those kinds of things too. Lots of communities are, don't have that so much because a lot of people who would create that kind of content have it in some way, shape, or form, in their office or in their
Yeah.
basement. But then there are a lot of people that want to do that kind of stuff that can't. So, like for music, I wouldn't so much say, oh, I know 10 people with a small recording studio in their basement, but I'd say, look, we have bars and open mic nights
Yeah.
and lots of people making music, 5 high schools in the area where kids playing instruments. Obviously, this is a thing. So how do
Yeah.
we meet that need?
Yeah.
And do that with all the things, basically.
That's great. That's great. Well, and you mentioned too, kind of the awareness and the promotion of it. Could you talk a little bit about that? Because that's something that
Yeah.
we definitely see sometimes. It's sort of like, you might have a great resource at the library,
Hmm.
but how does the community, how does the local community know that that's a place where, you could record,
Right.
an album or a track or
Right.
something like that if you're a local band,
Yeah.
that might not immediately come to mind, like, oh, I should record it at the library, depending
Right.
on your on
Yeah,
your
sure.
recent interactions with it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we've been very intentional about promoting the new space, and
Yeah.
we started before it was completely built.
Okay.
So about, I don't know, maybe a month before our grand opening, our our CEO made sure we had some intentional meetings where we brought together sort of local movers and shakers in the
Okay.
community, so our local leaders,
Yeah.
both formal like city council members and more informal, just like business leaders that do all of the functions,
Hmm.
that kind of
Yeah.
thing. Made sure to share what was happening in the space, gave them coffee and a scone,
Yep.
And then also had an ask, very specific ask. If you like what you see, make sure you share it with your network.
Oh, great.
And that went a long way to helping the word get out.
Yeah.
And then we also continued that even after we opened, just running people through and giving tours
Yeah.
with specific people we wanted to see our new space.
Yeah.
And
That's
then we
great.
also, one or two times, we even had we know some other local podcasts in town, and we
Yeah.
invited them to use our equipment before we opened,
Yeah.
so they could share, because it was a local podcast, so they can say, "Yeah, I'm recording this in the library's new podcast studio.
Yeah. That's
It's
great.
awesome. Come check it out." That kind of thing. And
That's
then, now we're continuing that process more with just more traditional promotion. So, on social media, in our building, we have a good connection with local news organizations. So
yeah.
we'll share that kind of thing too with them.
That's great. Well, and you're mentioning kind of the usage of the multimedia rooms, but then also just it sounds like study rooms, meeting rooms, some things like that, as well as
Yeah.
books. What or collections? What do you think is really the makeup of people coming into the library? I mean, if you were just, kind of off the cuff, are you saying that, do you think 5% of the people are using the spaces and 95% are using the collections? Do you think it's the opposite? Kind of just ballpark. What's your
Yeah.
expectation? What do you think?
In the whole building, I'm going to say half and half.
Yeah,
Um, because we're a major meeting spot in our community. We have a lot of big meeting rooms, so local organizations, state government, et cetera, comes in to use our larger spaces for meetings. So they're in here all the time.
yeah, okay,
Um, those 5 rooms that are small meeting rooms, we actually have 8 others in another part of our building. Those are huge. I mean, where else can you go to, get away from your office, meet with a few people, do a Zoom call,
yeah,
do your telehealth meeting, et cetera,
yeah,
if you don't have great connection at home
yeah,
too. So those are used a ton. Um, and then just, in that newer space with, a big chunk of our public computers there,
yeah,
we have all types of people coming in to use that, from, people who are, working on schoolwork, you leave me alone, to I need help printing out this stuff that my grandkid just sent me.
yeah.
So all types, but it gets those spaces get a lot of use,
Well,
definitely.
and that's something else I found really interesting about. I can't remember exactly which article I was reading that you'd written, but it seemed like, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but it seemed
Mhm.
like when maybe you were writing, 10 years ago or so, it seemed like there was a lot of what you were writing about was almost kind of um, libraries becoming more digital, right? So the importance of the website, the importance of
Yeah.
having these digital collections and awareness of the website, and I was just wondering what your thinking might be now, because it's kind of like what is the importance of the space
Mm.
and what is the importance of the digital connection, or
Hmm.
is it all just together? I mean, what
Yeah.
would be kind of your opinion now?
That's a good question. Um, I think digital is probably even more important these
Okay.
days. I mean, I'll say quote unquote traditionally, like I said earlier, half of our book collection is our ebooks.
Yeah.
So making sure people know that, we have an app. You can download it. Even just like doing a traditional thing like searching the library's catalog,
Yeah.
that's digital.
Yeah.
So I mean, the only way to do that now is to go to our website.
Yeah.
So huge. That's a huge deal. So yeah, I think our building is certainly important
Hmm.
because that's where we live, but
Yeah.
we also live online globally 24/7. So
Yeah.
it's hard to um, do a percent kind of thing
Sure.
on that,
Sure.
but just as important, if not more so, I
Yeah.
think, because also digital is like, especially like with social media or or like making a podcast or a video, that is one great way to connect with people wherever they are,
Yeah.
on their own time rather than passively waiting for someone to come up to the desk,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, that makes sense. We talk about that internally too. It's kind of like what is, our um team works hybrid, but yet we all
Mm.
still come in, right?
Yeah.
And so there's kind
Yeah.
of this unique, people are working from home often 4 days a week, and there's communication channels and all that, but yet we still come in, and we're still
Right.
together at, one day a week or various points in time.
Hmm.
And sometimes we're just kind of like, why do we do that? But yet we do, and
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
just wondered if you had any thoughts on that, or kind of the.
Well, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
In with a library example, um, for customers, the building is
Yeah.
one, it's the only place in town that is a neutral space for everybody to use.
Yeah.
You know, I go to church. I go to my church on Sundays. It's a great
Mhm.
place to connect, but you sort of have to like that kind of thing to go there.
Yeah.
You can hang out at a mall or a Walmart or something, but you're there to buy stuff. You're not really there to socialize.
Yeah.
Same thing with a restaurant.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can come in as long as you buy a meal and then don't hang out all day,
Right.
right? But the library, you can hang out all day,
Yeah.
and you can set up, a meeting room to, I want to do my thing. I want to get my knitting club together,
Yeah.
or have a meeting about the current political environment or
Yeah.
whatever, because we have such a broad spectrum of people in our community, and they can all do their thing at the library,
Yeah.
which is great.
Yeah. No, that's definitely see that too. It's kind of like, there is a difference between community spaces, places where those like proverbial third places that people have, as opposed to
Yeah.
retail, as opposed to work. I mean, it's
Right.
just different,
Right.
It doesn't mean
Well,
that
where
people
else
go
can
there.
you hang out?
Yeah, exactly. And it's kind of like it doesn't mean that people go there necessarily to connect with others, but there's almost kind of a byproduct of the hanging out, like you're talking about, that
Uh-huh.
that can happen sometimes, and
Right.
um, but well, that's wonderful. And just another thing that I found really interesting about what you were writing about was, when it comes to things like, I think I can't remember your exact line, but you said something like, um, the library can help people not just consume, but basically become creators, right? To
Yep.
to to
Yeah.
be creative
Yeah.
themselves. And what do you think, places like libraries and community spaces, like what do you think is their role in economic development? Because, I come
Hmm.
from a co-working background, like I ran a co-working space
Okay.
for several years. And so we were always being told about economic development, and oh, this is
Right.
helpful for economic development. But
Yeah.
really, I mean, in my mind, all of these type of community spaces where people are
Hmm.
gathering, building, creating, that is economic development. But what is your take on
Yeah.
the library as an economic development
Yeah.
engine?
So
Yeah,
I've actually talked about that in presentations before, because
interesting.
a lot of libraries will think, okay, I'm gonna create a makerspace, but then they're focused on teens,
Yeah,
which is great. Nothing
sure.
wrong with that. But they're here for like 3 or 4 years.
Yeah,
You're only a teen for a short amount of time. Then you go away to college and you're
yep,
gone. Whereas if you focus on a 29-year-old in their first or second job,
yeah,
they do have an economic impact on the community, right? They might have kids here, stay here, start their own business,
yeah.
become an entrepreneur, and pour back into the community. And that's a 30-year process instead of a 4-year process,
Interesting. Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
So that's how I look at it. And then with, at least at my library, what we're doing, we're gathering tools to help people start
Yeah,
so they can tell their own story, right? We have good microphones, but we don't have the, $3,000 microphone.
sure.
We have the equipment that, yes, you can do that here. If you want to get fancy, there are other places maybe to go, but we'll get you started.
Yeah.
And the great thing about that these days is like, oh, the singer Billie Eilish. That's
Okay.
how her and her brother started in the bedroom. She had a like cheap $99 microphone and
Yep.
made a hit song there, just with, $500 or less worth of equipment
Yeah.
total. And we have that.
Yeah.
which is
I,
pretty cool.
well, and I think that's a great way to look at it too. It's kind of like it's not, it doesn't necessarily need to be the place that has the most professional recording studio, but it's a place to get started. It's kind of that
Right.
independent learning and experience. And then
Yeah.
maybe they either decide to save or something and get the equipment at home or go to a
Mm-hmm.
different place. But it's
Mm-hmm.
kind of that, how do you record your first song? How do you record your
Yeah.
first video,
Yeah.
without having to
Well, and
get
it's
thousands of
that
dollars? Yeah.
plus, we might have a class on here's how you use this setup, whereas, somebody who just went out and bought that equipment doesn't necessarily have a class. They can skim through 20 YouTube videos,
Yeah.
maybe find one that could help, but we can say, here's what we have, here's how you use it. Now go knock yourself out, right?
So do you also have classes and training on some of these things?
Yeah,
Oh, you
yeah,
do?
we
Okay.
do. We do. We actually, for a lot of the things in that space, we have required training before you can
Yeah.
start using it.
Oh, interesting.
It like with with the cricket, so you don't cut your finger,
Yeah.
that kind of thing.
Right.
But yeah, we do an intro class, and then we have other classes too, like just what's the next step? How do you do things with it?
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
So, like I said, the goal of this program is to help people that are trying to run a community space and really trying to thrive in modern times, right? And what's
Yeah.
going on. Um, is there anything additional or any kind of final words that you would want to say about, somebody who's thinking about either making their community space a little bit more digital, a little bit
Mhm.
more aware in kind of modern times, or thinking about adding resources that could, might impact their community directly. Just any thoughts on that and lessons you've learned, let's say, on what to do or what
Yeah.
not to do
Yeah.
when it comes
Sure.
to this. Yeah.
I think the biggest thing to do is, well, one, I mean, probably you have some inkling of an idea for a focus.
Yeah.
Start with that, but then find those people in your community that might be interested. Like, I mentioned our recording studios, and maybe you can connect with local musicians, you
Yeah.
know, bring 10 or 20 of them into a room with coffee and scones again and
Yeah.
say, what would you like? What's missing from your setup? Or do you have a setup? Would you like something like that?
Yeah.
And just listening and seeing what they're wanting and then trying to meet that need. I
Yeah.
think that's a big way to do it. Just, connect with that segment of your community and find out what they want to do and how you can help.
That's great. That's great. Well, let me ask. So, if people like what you've been saying, they're interested, they want to learn more either about you or about your library,
Mhm.
where are some places they can go or how can they, learn more about it?
Yeah. So the library,
Yeah.
we've got an awesome website, tscpl.org for Topeka and Shawnee County Public Library
Yeah.
.org.
Great.
Visit there. We've got stuff about our level 2 tech center is what we call this space.
Yeah.
If you want to know more about me, go to davidleaking.com. That's where my blog is, and you'll find all my stuff there. Happy to connect.
Well, wonderful, wonderful. Well, David, thank you so much for taking part in this interview and being part of our second episode here, and just really appreciate it. So, uh,
Yeah, it's
thank you,
been fun.
David. Yeah.
Yeah,
Hey,
you're welcome.
talk to you later. All right. I hope you enjoyed this episode with David. And as always, to hear more interviews, please like and subscribe to our channel on YouTube or follow us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts.